episode 7 of What's Up with the Economy. In the last episode, we examined the transfer of public assets to create private wealth. And in this episode, we're going to look at the minimum wage compared to real cost of living and the economic effects of raising the minimum wage. And specifically, we're going to examine this issue within the context of the Flagstaff economy. The Fair Labor Standards Act, passed in 1938, abolished child labor, established the 40-hour work week, and defined the minimum wage. It was not an easy fight, but with enough public outcry, strikes, and protests, Congress began to listen. Roosevelt sent the bill to Congress 4 times before it was ratified. In determining the minimum fair wage, the Labor Standards Board was to consider the cost of living and all other relevant circumstances affecting the value of the service rendered, as well as the relation of the work to the physical and economic health, efficiency, and the well-being of the employees. There is a movement taking place among cities to take control of their own economies by significantly boosting the minimum wage. There are over 200 living wage ordinances in place, and since 2012, there have been 27 local minimum wage ordinances passed. Now, at this moment, across the nation, there are 9 proposals pending, all of which are aimed at raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour and indexing it to inflation. Cities are addressing their own rising costs of living to lift more people out of poverty and stimulate their own economies with living wage increases, because the federal government and most state governments have not been responsive to the needs of the people. Congress has raised the minimum wage only 3 times in the past 30 years. The tipped wage has been stuck at $2.13 an hour for more than 20 years. Now, if the current minimum wage had the buying power it had in 1968, it would be worth $10.88. Compared to Arizona's minimum wage, $8.05 an hour, that's a 26% loss of purchasing power. If the minimum wage had kept pace with worker productivity, it would be worth over $21 an hour per day, and that means there is a 68% difference between the economic value of an hour's worth of work and the minimum wage. Now, if people are not being paid for the full value of their productivity, are they being exploited? I mean, how do you feel about working for an hour but only getting paid for about 20 minutes? For over 20 years, local economies have been suffering from the Walmart effect. And that's when a Walmart moves to town with the promise of new jobs, the opposite actually occurs. A study by Newmark, Zhang, and Ciccarella found that when a new Walmart opens, retail wages in the community fall by 1.3%. And every Walmart employee replaces 1.4 retail jobs in the community. Additionally, a report by the House Committee on Education and the Workforce estimated that a Walmart employee costs the community and the federal government $3,000 to $5,800 per year in income assistance through food stamps, earned income credits, Medicaid, and other assistance programs. On average, a Walmart associate brings in $359,000 a year and is only paid $18,000 a year. And this results in $330,000 per Walmart employee per year being shipped to the coffers in Bentonville, Arkansas. This is an example of a negative economic multiplier effect. The 2 Walmarts and the Sam's Club store in Flagstaff have about maybe 800 employees. So without these stores, there would be 320 more retail jobs, 445,000 more in wages, and over $100 million more in dollars in sales remaining in the community. And the state of Arizona, the federal government, are providing over $3 million a year in assistance to these Walmart employees. Essentially, Walmart is exploiting all of us. Walmart is not the only company exploiting its workforce, causing job losses in the community, relying on public assistance to help its employees survive, and exporting its profits out of the community. Consider every low-paying chain restaurant, big box store, and hotel. Declining wages have been occurring for a number of occupations, and according to the National Employment Law Project, the most common occupations at the bottom of the pay scale have averaged a 6% decline on real median hourly wage since 2009. Well, let's look at wages in Flagstaff. So according to the City of Flagstaff, the average household income is just under $70,000 a year, and the median household income is at $55,000 a year. Now remember that there are 50% above and 50% below the median. And this tells us that there are significantly more families with incomes below the average than there are families with incomes above the average. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are nearly 58,000 workers with a median hourly wage of $15.39 in Flagstaff. 22,600 workers are working for less than $15 an hour. 14,000 of these workers are working for an average weighted median wage of $9.38 an hour. Flagstaff is a special place for many reasons, and because of this, we have a robust tourism industry. According to the City of Flagstaff, we entertain over 4 million guests a year who bring $390 million of their tourist dollars with them. This is a big business for Flagstaff and requires about 12,000 employees. And it just so happens that those are the lowest paid employees in town. Most of them earn less than $10 an hour. So a family of 4 with 2 parents working full-time at $9.38 an hour each will earn $37,520 in a year. According to the Economic Policy Institute's Family Budget Calculator, this family of 4 needs over $71,000 a year just to get by. That means each parent needs to earn over $18 an hour. Now, an employed single parent has to earn over $26 an hour just to get by. There is a 50 to 70% gap between what people making minimum wage in Flagstaff earn and what they need to get by. Could this be why 25% of Flagstaff households are living in poverty? So as you can see, a $15 minimum wage does not even meet the needs of a family in Flagstaff. Raising the minimum wage is essentially transferring money from the pockets of a few to the pockets of many. And because of this, there's a lot of opposition to raising the minimum wage. There is an economic theory that states, if the price is increased, less will be consumed. Well, this theory is misleadingly applied to labor, and the outcry becomes, jobs will be lost. The evidence shows otherwise because labor, people, behave differently than products. When you pay low-wage laborers more, they spend it and it quickly gets recirculated into the community rather than trucked off to corporate headquarters. There has been an enormous amount of research on the effects of raising the minimum wage, and the results are clear. Clear enough that over 650 economists have signed on to increasing the minimum wage. Now, as you will see, raising the minimum wage is good for people, businesses, and the community. First, who are we helping by raising the minimum wage? The minimum wage is not for teenagers anymore. The average age of a minimum wage worker is now 35. 88% are over the age of 20, and 1/3 are over 40. More than half are women, and many are single parents working an average of 43 hours a week. So depending on the state, 1/3 to 1/2 are eligible for public assistance. Any new income these families earn will immediately be spent in the community on housing, food, childcare, and transportation. Secondly, raising the minimum wage has positive effects on businesses. We assume that paying employees more will raise operating costs for businesses. Well, labor is about 1/3 of restaurant and about 1/10 of retail operating costs. Now, a report by Reich, Jacobs, and Bernhardt studying the minimum wage ordinance of San Francisco found a 10% increase in wages translated into 0.5% increase in operating costs for restaurants, and not even 0.2% for retail. Expecting these increases to be passed on to consumers, the Federal Reserve Board of Chicago calculates that every 10% increase in wages translates to a 0.14% increase in the price of all goods and services. Now, if the minimum wage increases by 40%, the cost of that $4 cup of coffee will increase by 2 pennies. Is that too much of a community sacrifice to lift a quarter of the city out of poverty? These are very small increases in costs and prices, and much less than you would expect. It turns out that when employers begin paying livable wages, other costs decrease and efficiency increases, offsetting the payroll bill. Employee turnover is one of the biggest losses to a business. So according to the Department of Labor, the hotel and food service industry had an annual turnover rate of over 62% in 2013. That's 3 out of 5 hospitality and food service employees that quit their jobs every year. So turnover in fast food restaurants alone is much higher at 120%. So much of this has to do with the challenges of living on a less than adequate income. Unreliable transportation, inadequate health care, inadequate child care, tenuous housing, and a lack of control over one's circumstances. All of these things can prevent people from being productive at work or even showing up. According to a study by Boucher and Glynn in 2012, the median cost of job replacement for jobs paying below $30,000 a year is just over 16% of the employee's annual salary. Now, considering that 3 out of 5 employees leave, low-wage employers are currently paying an extra 48% in operation costs for lost productivity, hiring, and training. Now, a study by Pollan and Wicks-Lim of the Political Economy Research Institute found that following minimum wage and living wage increases, employee turnover dropped by 17% and generated cost reductions that covered 20% of the wage bill increase. But that's not all. According to the efficiency wage theory, paying employees more than the market rates or significantly increasing their wages will elicit harder work because it increases the cost of them of losing their jobs. And as workers' lives improve, they don't want to go back to living in poverty. Kaufman and Zelinska found in a 2011 study that managers reported a 23% offset of increased labor costs simply due to improved operational efficiencies. Employees' morale, maintenance, and customer service all improved, while absenteeism, grievances, disciplinary actions, and equipment damage diminished. Employees without financial stress are happy employees, and happy employees make businesses more productive and more profitable. In a paper entitled, "Why Does the Minimum Wage Have No Discernible Effect on Employment?" John Schmidt of the Center for Economic Policy Research reports that employers do not cut hours, positions, or non-wage benefits as a result of changes in the minimum wage. Instead, they increase training for low-wage employees to raise their productivity to a level that corresponds to their new higher earnings. In report after report by organizations such as
the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, the Economic Policy Institute, the Political Economy Research Institute at the University of Massachusetts, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, the Economic Roundtable, the National Employment Law Project, and many, many others,
the consensus is there is no measurable impact on employment of raising the minimum wage.
What would happen to Flagstaff's economy if we gave 22,600 people a raise over 5 years? By the end of 5 years, our family of 4 would be earning $60,000 a year. Flagstaff's economy would be retaining nearly $198 million a year. This direct reinvestment in the economy would have the potential to create approximately 3,300 new full-time minimum wage jobs. This is how a positive economic multiplier effect works. When the minimum wage is increased to $15 an hour, Flagstaff families will have more to spend on improving their standard of living. Most of that money will stay in Flagstaff and generate more demand for businesses and therefore create new jobs. This $198 million of direct spending will multiply into over $900 million in indirect spending in the Flagstaff economy. These projections are based on the equation the Federal Reserve uses to calculate the amount of stimulus it needs to inject into the economy to keep it from out of depression. They are also based on assuming that low-wage workers will spend 80% of that stimulus. Now, in actuality, low-wage workers spend 106% of their incomes. A study by the National Employment Law Project looked at the follow-up research of the minimum wage increases in Santa Fe, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and many other localities, and found that employment increased, unemployment decreased, and businesses expanded and new ones were started. You have never heard anything about these studies because there are lobbying organizations and corporations dedicated to killing any living wage ordinances and minimum wage increases. The American Legislative Exchange Council and the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives have created a model bill called the Living Wage Mandate Preemption Act. And this bill provides for the repeal of any minimum wage provisions introduced by a local elected bodies within a state. The argument against the minimum wage increases uses the threat of job losses. The Chamber of Commerce, the National Restaurant Association, and the National Federation of Independent Businesses and other trade organizations spend over $90 million a year lobbying against raising the minimum wage. Their studies and reports are not academically generated, but commissioned for the purpose of spreading lies and convincing you to vote against your best interests. Low-wage workers have no such lobbyists, and this is why we need to learn the facts and educate and engage others. Support Flagstaff Needs a Raise. A different world is not created by indifferent people. Become an activist and make a difference. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more of the episodes, check that here. If you want to subscribe to the channel, check that here. Please become an activist, vote, and invest responsibly. Thank you.